We apologize for that interruption. We had an unusual technical problem here with Google Hangouts on air, and we've come back to continue our broadcast, and we hope we didn't cause you any inconvenience or discomfort losing the broadcast for a while there, and now we're back on. We're going to continue where we left off and then continue our broadcast. So let's go back to where we left off.
This day I call the heavens and the earths as witnesses intercessorily for and hopefully and prayerfully not against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose love and life with light, so that you and your children may live. For I give you good doctrine, forsake ye not our new millennial law.
Okay. A pleasant subscription. Maybe made sunflowers for up Cherokee and Blackfoot. This is Anna Marie singing Christmas, and I am Cherokee, Cheyenne, Blackfoot, and Algonquin, Dakota. And I am also a French, English, and German. That means we are all related. We embrace the new millennial golden rule as the law of all the natives of the sacred ground that is Mother Earth, and all the planets of all the universes.
Welcome again to our afternoon broadcast. We're going to be broadcasting in stereo. We often do this because some of the people who know about these broadcasts don't have access to a computer and can only hear it by calling into a phone line that has recording. So we're going to set that up right now. Okay, we're recording in stereo. We are broadcasting, and what we are doing is our Eleusinian Mysteries Revealed, or the Eleucosaviral Mysteries ceremony that we offer to our own dearest and beloved and extended family and community, as well as the entire world, locally, globally, and universally, the world and worlds. I am might say a very real Ellie of the type in contact who was broadcasting, remember, on her ham radio and saying, is anybody listening? Is anybody out there? Can you hear me? And I believe that our family must hear me, our world family must hear me, and our universal family, including Goddess God, the force that creates and sustains us all, here's these broadcasts, and that they are a gift to my to all humanity, but particularly those who know this venue, this place in space-time that we are centering these broadcasts around, which is the home that became a gathering place for women, and women bringing their children and youth into a place where they tried on hats, and they put on hats, and they also, of course, talked a great deal to one another and came to know one another. And they talked about their families, and they talked about their children and their the youth and the men also, I'm sure, of their lives, and they talked about their world. Many of these women were immigrants who had come into North America, or their mothers had come into North America on a boat that went between and landed at Ellis Island and came right in front of the Statue of Liberty. I only recently came to know that the Statue of Liberty is indeed the goddess Astrea or Astra, the chief goddess of the civilization that we call Atlantis, that was the longest sustained civilization in the recorded story of humanity, and also was entirely without war and without any fortifications, had a high quality of life for all of its family, community, and citizenry, and the decisions were made at least 50% by women. That was Atlantis. It was the longest survived, sustained, peaceful, happy civilization known to the planet Earth. I say this is what we all want again. And it is a gift not only to women and their children and youth, their youth and children, female and male, females and males, but also to older men. Because older men, many of the older men that we've known passed prematurely and don't recognize what one of the branches of our family did teach very clearly, that one can have eternal life and one can have eternal kind and loving life. And they said on the many mansions, well, I corrected the statement put in a patriarchal context to say her and his many mansions, which refer to our planets, the planets of the universe. When we get our relationships right here on a planet, on our home planet, we flower in such a way, we bud and bloom and flower in such a way creatively that we don't waste our time harming each other or stressing each other, but instead we put our gifts to use creatively, and we have the ability to travel in a non-polluting way throughout the universe, and also to open the stargates. Now, the reason I say the stargates, our family, the Margulies family, which was the home run by our grandmother Ray, and our mother Harriet ran a gathering place for women here. It was where Harriet and her sister Jacqueline were raised by Ray, who had lost contact with her sister Clara, and many of the women of her family. They all lost contact with each other because of immigration. And immigration itself was caused by the fact that when they were in Europe, Europe was then in a patriarchal time. We have all grown up in a patriarchal time, and Europe had many, many wars. There were many drafts. There was a lot of income inequity. There was starvation. There was pogroms. There was wars, and there were persecutions of all kinds going on in Europe during that time. And it was a patriarchal time, and the challenge for our times is to recognize, going in our thinking back and forth in time, a way of life that is not patriarchal and therefore not stressful and therefore not war prone and waste prone and eventually unsustainable, but a society which is eternally sustainable and essentially a heaven on earth and a heavens on earths. And we believe that by going to this venue, the home that brought women together to try on hats, we can put on the hat of the goddess of the Statue of Liberty, Astrea, as well as all of the other goddesses that she gave birth to, because in the story of the European goddess of Astrea, she was sometimes called Rhea In the Balkans and in the later Greek civilization, she was called Re or Rhea. She was a goddess of the sun and the stars, so it was all about radiance and spreading light. And she gave birth to the pantheon of Olympus goddesses, and as well as the gods. That was the chief. She was the Titan goddess that gave birth to all the goddesses and gods. I want to do that for you. I want to give you eternal life as goddesses and gods. And I do that by taking you to this place and letting you imagine it as if the women then had lived under parity instead of patriarchy. And the men had too, and all of their children were raised in that way, as they were in Atlantis. And also, I'm taking you back, the people that of our family heritages came to North America after they had spent quite a number of generations in Europe, after they had spent many, many generations in the Middle East and in Africa and in Asia, because our family heritages took us to many different places and are interrelated. We now know that most of the human family originated in Africa, but there were many, many migrations that brought different groupings of family to different places and eventually populated all the continents. Our family was on all the continents. We can trace this very clearly in our family genealogy. Our family had all of the religious heritages. Our family knew goddess worship in many, many places. And so we're bringing this all to this place so that we can recover from our several thousands of years under patriarchy, which occurred after the fall of Atlantis, and go back to Atlantis and have all the benefits that we would have had all along. Now, the Statue of Liberty is in the New York Harbor, and one of the important people who began the experiment for democracy in North America, which is what the Statue of Liberty really stands for. And by the way, democracy is a word of Greek or Atlantis origin. It means rule by the people. Instead of rule by an emperor or rule by a king, it is rule by the people, all the people. And so what we know is that this place in New York, where the Statue of Liberty on the border of New Jersey and New York, was where also lived a family by the name of Lambert Payne. I'm going to take a little break here for a moment. And let me just say this, play this marvelous excerpt of the tape. And this tape is important because under a patriarchy, sister relationships are stressed and undervalued. And the sister kazina circle, or the community gathering of women, is almost completely ignored. As a gathering of women as equals to men and of spiritual crowned qualities is ignored under patriarchy. Under patriarchy, you have congresses of gatherings of men, clubs of gatherings of men, but you don't have gatherings of women to discuss anything of importance, not only to their families and their children, but to their wider society. So the gathering at the hat store was a precursor to what we should be doing now. And what I say we can do on these Hangouts on air. And then also, once we have learned a little bit about how to form a circle and have a circle process of discussion on air, we can do that in the many places that our family and community reside, using the same model, which is in the New Millennial Golden Rule. So what we are doing is going back to this place in time and space called this home that was the hat store. It was actually at 3521 Independence Boulevard on the west side of a city called Chicago, which is a Native American name for an onion or a many-layered reality. And go back and call it interdependence and risen Roosevelt, because we'll remember this time that Roosevelt was not just a man. Roosevelt, there was an Eleanor, like another Ellie. What if she had been full partner? Would we have had World War II at all? What if all of the women of her time had been full partners of their men? Would we have had World War II? Would we have had Stalinist purges? Would we have had Nazi genocide? Would we have had the decimation of the Native Americans? Would we have had the exploitation and separation of so many black families under slavery, such that they were often in chains? Would we have had that? Had we had parity? I know we would not have. Would we have had the potato famines in Ireland and Scotland? I don't think so. Now, all of these cultures that I'm talking about, Native Americans, Celtic, African Americans, and of course, I also should include very big in our part of the world, Hispanic, and mixtures of Native Americans and Hispanic cultures, all had goddess. They all worshiped the goddess for 35,000 years at least before the main process of worship became patriarchal. The making of Jesus Christ into a patriarchal king did not come from Jesus Christ. And Christ was offering anointedness to everyone, that Christ, with Miriam of Magdala. And it was the pressures that they had, even among their apostles, like Peter and Paul, that made it difficult for that couple to articulate the full Essene vision, which was the full equality, the equal anointedness of female and male. We have the ability through the Eleusinian mysteries, by the gathering of the women, understanding what they did in the Eleusinian mysteries is that it was a process there that was officiating the ceremony as I am doing it. They called them hierophants, and they gathered the entire community with no hierarchy. There was no such thing as a slave and a master when you came to this ceremony. There was no such thing as a rich person or a poor person. Everybody came as an equal. And what was important is they started with the women conferring the goddesshood on their daughters. Then the women conferred the goddesshood on their sons, the godhood on their sons. And then they conferred it on the whole community as the way to immortality. That's really what the ceremony was about. And they used a phrase, konks ampax, which was a way that we now interpret in modern language, ko Kongs means means cooperation. Means both I am and which is the ancient phrase for the presence of God as God always. And Pax, P-A-X, is peace with the emphasis on the X, which is the estrogen-related chromosome that women have 2 of and men have 1 of. And so that's what we're doing. We're going to do this ceremony now. Who is here? Of course, Ray and her daughter Ashera Harriet, the Titan Ray, who was our grandmother, who I'm named after, and her daughter Ashera Harriet, who was the daughter of Ray and her very delightful younger sibling mate, whose name was, we'll whisper it now because we're going to bring the men in at the end of the ceremony, but we'll say Julian. He passed away at the beginning of the Depression, as did many, many nice and kind men, because patriarchy had produced a horrible situation in the 1920s and the 1930s. Just after its already even worse situation of World War I, that men like Julian ran away from Europe so they didn't have to get drafted by kings who were, and prime ministers for kings who were fighting with swords, and by that time they had some level of cannonry, and they were causing enormous amount of physical damage to each other. And they all got the flu, and they were dying in the millions. One of the nice scenarios that patriarchy gave us. Well, with the Depression, a lot of very fine people also passed away. And one of them was Julian. But he gave Ray 2 daughters. And to have daughters in a patriarchal society, 2 of them, is a great gift, because it allows an incubation period of time, an incubation time, to think about the value of the female. I and our mother, Ashera Harriet, and Julia Marie, my sister, didn't do that enough. Frankly, we didn't do that enough. And in fact, in their efforts to gather the women for buying the hats, even Ray and Ashera Harriet and Jacqueline didn't quite do that enough. They took pride in what they did, but they didn't understand the eternal feminine rising aspect, especially in relationship to putting on a hat and thinking of that in terms of the crown worn by the Statue of Liberty, the goddess of Atlantis. So that's why we're going back to this place in space-time. And I am broadcasting this in the hope that not only you are listening, but all of our ancestry in the Akashic record, which is the memory that the universe has for the lives of all people, and whatever they felt and whatever they thought, the total memory that Goddess God has is being heard and is representing you. And we have younger generations here of both young women and young men who are cousina and cousins of this family, as well as direct descendants. We have, of course, I like to start with Marian and Hadass, because Hadass is the Hebrew word for Esther. And Esther was promised 50-50 by Xerxes Ahasuerus. And she didn't make good on the offer, because he offered it to her as an individual instead of to her as a female representative of her gender. That's the key difference. That's the difference that she didn't quite have. They lived in a very patriarchal time. After the fall of Atlantis, the ancient Israel people and all the people of Europe drifted into patriarchy. And the women didn't think. They were not socialized to think they were supposed to make decisions. They were socialized to think they were supposed to be traded like chattel. That they were supposed to only bear babies and children and raise them. And then after the child got to a certain age, they were supposed to give them up to the control of the father. That's still going on in the Middle East today. But we have a different vision, and ours is the Atlantis vision. So I'm going to name the people again, and then I'll do the ceremony very quickly. Okay, so we're going to name Marion and Hadass and Naomi and Ruth. Of course, we're naming as Hera, Harriet, and Rhea, Riette, and Jacqueline, and I'm going to put myself first, Rochelle and Julianne Marie. Why do I put myself first? Because one of the things that I have learned, which we have to look at, is that in a patriarchal society, older siblings are usually more caught up in the status quo, which if you're raised in patriarchy means you're more caught up in patriarchy than younger siblings. Younger siblings are a little bit more the revolutionaries, and there's a vast literature about this in anecdotal as well as some scientific studies anthropologically. The younger siblings shake things up a little bit more in toward, hopefully in the best direction, and they tend to be more democratic, less autocratic, and more concerned with mutuality and affection, whereas older siblings are more controlling and more serving of the existing authority structure. So that's a difference here that I want. But however, I believe that to have full democracy, which is extreme mutuality, is a great benefit to older siblings. They are less stressed, they live longer, their children are happier, healthier, and so it's a gift that younger siblings really should be giving to their older siblings, only sometimes the older siblings make that difficult because of the structures of the society that already maintained a hierarchy, especially generationally and in sibling birth order. And that varies in different families. In some families, older children are more the revolutionaries. It depends on the family. There is some individual difference on this, so it's not simple across the board rule. And in any case, once you establish an Atlantis like egalitarian society, both older and younger and middle siblings and all the birth orders become part of a larger circle, such as through this process of the Eleusinian mysteries, and the intensity of that hierarchy gets lessened, and therefore people function more in a rounded way, and they're able to perceive. They're able to take one another's role a little bit better and perceive reality a little bit more mutually, and that increases the creativity of the entire group, and therefore you have great leaps forward, quantum leaps that we are now approaching this quantum leap time of this month. So now I'm very worried about you, all of you who have been coming. I'm going to get to naming some more. I've been talking about this with you for 3 years, the difference between parity and patriarchy. You've been seduced into patriarchy again because you did what Martin Luther King warned against. Do not take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Gradualism means 1 or 2 women a few years at a time, a couple of more percent here, a couple of more percent here, a few more here, a few more there, maybe 1 woman president once in a while. That is gradualism. It isn't parity, it is tokenism. And tokenism has now been used very effectively by the old guard patriarchs to deceive women into thinking that they were making progress, while underneath the surface, they were being prevented from it. And women also played a role in this. Our U.S. feminist societies became very, very overwhelmingly over-focused on the issue of abortion and neglected representation and balance of love and work to such a degree that men no longer had any trust or liking of females, didn't see what they were doing for men at all. And it created another logjam that delayed everybody from patriarchy. So part of the problem was that women who had been so hurt by patriarchy were very reactive and also very easily co-opted back into it. So I'll say some more of the names of our family. You need to hear your names. I've said Marian Hadass. We're going to say Soma and Meredith and Vedanta. We're going to say Vanessa with Mariama, with her mother Victoria, with Mariama, with Libertia and Estrella, and with their more, we're going to name some of the contemporary Kazinas here, the younger ones, including Sharon and Raquel and Lynn. We're also including Elisheva. We're including Rachel Marie, Danielle Juliet with Barbara. We're including Alisa and Halal with Susan and her sisters, Jodine, Laura, and Sarah, very famous Silverkind, through the Julian link, very important link, because we're extending the gold of the Margulies, which means marigold, to the silver. We're transforming silver into gold by doing this. And we're also including the other branches. We're including the Zal kind. Zalman becomes Zal kind because Zal means, first of all, it has the Zet, or the Z of the generation of big change. Z. You're getting to the point where you make the difference now. Z. You either fail and you completely screw it all up and you're the last generation, or you're the Zeta. You're the culmination of the learning. And you're like a Solomon. You're very wise. Because that's what it means in Hebrew. But the wisdom is the wisdom of egalitarian culture instead of patriarchy. So we're including Rose and Annette and Marcia and Sandra and Rebecca and Denise. We're including, of course, that I didn't say the mother of Julian was Antoinette, and we have through Antoinette, we have Lucille, we have Lee, Thelma, Arlene, we have Batya, we have Helene, we have Sherry, we have a lot of other Silverkind who are very, very famous and very well known in anthropology, like Carol and others. And we have our Feldmarian group, two very great ladies, Cheryl and Stacy Anastasia, very important in our family locally, and I mentioned Danielle, Rachel Marie, and Danielle Juliet and Barbara, and also Meredith and Soma and Vedanta and I'm going on and on and on. There's a lot more. And then we get into the friendship dimension. We're remembering Mrs. Chess and her daughters. We're remembering Lillian Gay, who helped raise Jacqueline. Lillian Gay was a woman of color, and she had children. And in our society, they were not treated as equals at all at that time. And they're still struggling with that. Isn't that something? Even though some of the very finest people, in fact, some who came out of Chicago, like Ida B. Wells and the Percy family, Julian and his wife, I think her name was Roselle or Roxanne, broke through the ceilings of barrier. But we still have the problem of racism is a derivative of the problem of genderism. Once you form a hierarchy where people have to be exploited in order to fit in, then it's easy to exploit people based on an ethnic or racial appearance or designation. And that's why we see so much sectarian warfare and sectarian exploitation in different parts of the world, according to who the various groups are. And so let's see, I've named all these people. So I've got all our major branches, our Margulian, our Silverkind branch, our Zalkind branch, and our Feldmarian branch. And then we also have our neighbors who are also related, Ilse and Esther, Esther and Ilse, Sarah and Judy. We have Georgine with Shirley and Malka. We have all the Malka women that also came into our family experience. Alice, and there was others too. I don't know the name of the mother. I have to find out. And this is very important for our memory and our digesting what our life experiences have been about. I have also another group of family that came into our family for a while, prematurely, but we're always cousines and remain cousines. Julie and Dory and Dana and Dale and Debbie and Arlene and Tracy and Deborah and Paul and Hortense and Irene and Lillian and Pauline and Annie. These also came into my life. I have my neighbors here, Judy and May. I have Louise and Elizabeth. I have Margaret and Temmie and Kelly and Laura. And I have Susan and Marilyn. And we also have Ann Rita and Marilyn. We have, again, through Antoinette, we have Molly and Lillian. And we have Jessica and Jennifer with Ellen. And we have Linda and Michelle. We have all of these people who are here at this gathering. And so now I'm going to do the ceremony. Now, I also want to say the names of the young men because we also give them apotheosis too. After the mothers have conferred, the mothers and great-grandmothers have conferred apotheosis, like Ceres giving eternal life without having to go into the place of death, without having to go to Pluto. She's giving eternal life to her daughter Persephone, so she is a powered goddess and always has a happy life. No death, no shrouds, no dark. And but always budding and blooming and verdant and cornucopia. And so Ceres confers that, and we all the women confer that on each other and on our daughters and granddaughters and nieces. Then we take our nephews and sons, our sons and our nephews. Same thing. Ceres conferred apotheosis on Triptolemus, which is the equivalent of Marsyas. The Marsyas was the Balkan version of Triptolemus, which was the god of agriculture, or Marsyas or Mars was the original god of agriculture, not of war. In Atlantis, Mars was a god, or Marsyas or Triptolemus were gods of agriculture, of abundant fertility of the earth. And the earths, because they were gods. So obviously, if you're God, you can fly up and beyond the earth too. You can go to the other earths. So that's what we're talking about with the equinox true Qs. We'll get to that. So we conferred this also on Harlan Lewis Laviz and on Ross, on Yanushai and Amos and Marcel, with their mothers all gathering here together, doing this with our great and grandmothers remembered fully. As full citizens and decision makers, not as subjects, not as objects. And they would have had less widowhood. Their men would have lived longer, all of them, potentially for eternal life, including all of our fathers and grandfathers, had they lived under the laws of Atlantis, which we have given you in the form of the New Millennial Golden Rule. And so I'll say also the names of the men of our family as a whisper, because they would like to come back through the stargates too. Julian, Lewis, Alan, Emil, Oscar, Paul, and the younger brothers, as well as Joseph and Milton. And many, many more. And there's another group of family that let me make also very important, because they're struggling so with letting go of patriarchy, and they're having a terrible time, and they're asserting it all over the place where it doesn't belong. The family of Heidi and Barbara, Schulgreis and Linda and Diana, and also the family of Bessie and Penina and Antonina and Valentina and Elsa, who have some connection with Jackie today. I have come back into her life. The Russian women struggled with an enormous amount of patriarchy and still do. It is one of the most patriarchal societies on the earth, and it's one of the most militaristic, and it is in a state of environmental collapse in many places. That's where Chernobyl took place, remember? So this is a warning. Remember that the makers of Chernobyl did not have parity government, did they? And the makers of your risks do not have parity government either. So you want to be that parity government and announce yourself as a co-secretary general, co-severa now. So we'll do the ceremony. The light is on in all our hearts. We have with us marvelous, miraculous, budding, blooming flowers and water. Hugs and love to all, both and each and everyone as soon as possible. And we'll say all the blessings and greetings of all of our heritages, past, present, and future. We'll say namaste, and we'll say mitakuye. Oh, I forgot to mention Anna Marie. not forget this one, the most important, because we're on the land of the Native Americans and all their traditions and all of the women generations. They are going back to the beginning of time. Anna Marie singing cricket and Ma Patricia sunflowers, and their sisters Laura and Martha, and their daughters Rosa and April and Angela and Edith, and they're young, under age 38, young men too, Shannon and Ben and John, okay? And all of them representing much more. Obviously, we're representing the entire world here. We're representing the entire world and all of its various, you might want to call them branches of the family community of the tree of love and life in the light of the balance of parity. So so we'll say mitakuya oyosin, mitakuya kose viral, we'll say kong sam pax, ko pax culture, we'll say to your best, Sedleric, merci, we'll say bahava, l'chaim, shalom, salam, salam, shalom, no fratricidal warfare because the sorority is empowered. The circle of sister casinohood is empowered. All of the people of the Middle East are related. They all are absolutely related, very closely related. How in the world are they fighting with each other all the time? Patriarchy. Okay, and we'll say merci, we'll say schwanzavag, choose, we'll say dashiva, we'll say sayonara, choose, we'll say all the languages of all the heritages. And the Hatster was within 5 minutes of Chinatown, so we include them too, okay? Those women, Magu was their goddess, or Mazu is the name of their goddess, and or Tara or Kuan Yin, very, very important, because we surely need God's compassion now for the mistakes we've been making. So we include all those women, and some of them are being inviting to all of our hangouts, and you're going to be hearing about that soon. Some of them very famous in various fields of endeavor, and everything from anthropology and sociology and psychology to all the forms of communication of our modern world, as well as solar energy. So so we'll say all that, and we'll say this very important, especially because so many of the women of North America and the people of North America, men too, are not adequately breastfed, did not have on-cue breastfeeding, will drink the milk of human kindness for on-cue breastfeeding for all people, extended breastfeeding, that makes all people resilient to disease, fully highly intelligent, creative, and empathic to one another, and better bonded to their humanity. Will drink the milk of human kindness throughout life, and especially at the beginning of life, for all, both, and each and every one, representing all, both, and each and every one as just possible. We'll drink the water of loving, living planets that will regain and sustain our planet Earth to be, and all our planets to be, representing all, both, and each and every one, for all, both, and each and every one, as soon as possible. We'll celebrate and re-celebrate all our birthdays, conception days, name days, and holy days together for all, both, and each and every one as soon as possible, past, present, and future. And you know, I did not name all the names of the men of our family currently or past. Some of them are very important men in our family who I haven't named. There's a reason I haven't named them. Their women are not here, and their women have been ignoring this. That's why I can't name the men. It's not that I have forgotten the men. I love those men. But the women are not showing up for their own gender and for their youth and their children. And when that happens, you can't jump to the men. The women have to come and do their job. Nobody can do that for them. So we have to do it that way. And we'll celebrate and, let's see, let me hold it this way. We'll celebrate and re-celebrate all our birthdays, conception days, name days, and holy days together, starting with our equinox, conception and birthdays, birthdays and conception days of the spring and autumnal seasons, and then all years rounds. Past, present, and future as equinox true cues, co-secretaries, co-secretary generals. And again, we'll celebrate and re-celebrate all our birthdays, conception days, name days, and holy days together as equinox true cues, co-secretary generals, co-saviors, past, present, and future. That's all of you, and everyone we've ever known. Everyone we've ever known is included in this ceremony, both female and male. But we can't name the names of men when there's no woman here to represent them from their branch. We have our consciousness currency, very important. Consciousness Razor, go to the website, look on the area on infinite wealth. Our Shekinahs are of the past, our current Shekinahs, and our current young Shekinahs and Hekinahs. And now our big family tree. Oh, I forgot a branch looking at this. We forgot Mary and her mother, who's Hannah, and Ross. That's another young man that we also give apotheosis to, as well as Harlan Lewis Laviz and Shine, Amos, and Marcel. And I could say from the young man in my family with his young woman, Vanessa, who are centered here in the younger generation, that their young couplehood can become very much a model of what a healthy society would have perceived, not only for Esther and Xerxes, but also for Mariam of Magdala and Jesus of Nazareth, but not just for them, for all of their circle of young females and males in sisterhood and brotherhood and couplehood that is always that of equals, that love one another in a complementary way, that recognizes that there are some differences between women and men, but they have more in common in democracy than can be ignored, and they have to function in that way with mutual respect for each other as decision makers and guiders of their family life with love and work balance for both genders. And we'll say, there we are. And then, of course, my very special branches of family that are directly related to this place, this home that was a half store, well, a half gathering place of discussion and decision making. And we're also including this young lady, Vanessa. We're including not only Julianne Marie and I and our Shekinahs here, and our aunts and mothers, but also in their casinas, but also with Vanessa, her family members who we've mentioned, the women, Victoria and all the ones we've mentioned, her mother and the other women, including the young contemporaries of Rachel I'm sorry, of Sharon and Raquel and Lynn. And of course, with Stacy Anastasia, with Hadass, with all of the mothers implied here. I only do this as a separate area because I think it is important that we have particularly intense bonds to people that were raised by our own mothers. That's a very important area to strengthen that aspect and to remember not only our mothers and grandmothers and their line there, but also the fathers who came into play, and to remember that with some special attention. And to honor that with some special attention. And we also did give Vanessa a representative man for her family by the name of Howell, a man of peace and democracy also. Okay, and then we'll do the larger family tree again. And I'm also going to give a special mention again to Georgine with Geodora, because we're bringing together there the ancient Israel tradition with the Atlantis tradition. Geodora is clearly an Atlantis name. That's a very great, and Martha in the office brings together the biblical as well as the Ma name that is in the goddess names of almost every culture. So very important there. And did I do the kisses again? I'll do the kisses again. Okay, and then we're doing our bowl of fruit. It's a clear bowl because it means that we have the clarity to seek and get and announce parity. You have the clarity of parity. And then your rainbow shows and you shine all your light and all your colors. And so we'll start fresh with paradisal parity instead of plutonic patriarchal planetocide. We're going to have paradisal parity. We have it here on these broadcasts, so come join, unless you want the other alternative. And now we'll say, as we always do say, with reference to Mary Poppins, which is very much a goddesshood story of divine feminism. It goes way beyond traditional feminism. It talks about the relationships of women to family, to one another, to their empowerment in society, and the ability to help men understanding that just going to the office and making money is not manhood. So, and that the role of men in loving their families as partners to their wives, not dominators, and as loving, empathic people to their children is a key issue for their development as well, and their ability to fly like Bert did with Mary Poppins and put this time solar panels on all the roofs. So we'll say supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, all the blessings and all the greetings of all of our languages and all of our heritages of our earth and our earths, past, present, and future together. And we'll say supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, all the blessings and all the greetings of all the heritages of our earth and our earths, past, present, and future together. Okay, and we're going to send this as a message and let people know that it's been sent. And we will be back for additional broadcasts. We are broadcasting usually 5 times a day. Sometimes it's maybe only 4, and sometimes something occurs in terms of preparation or problem with the computer that I can't always do the 5, but we generally do at least 3 or 4 or 5 a day. And you are welcome. And, you know, all the while we were on here, we also were on our conference line, which is 641-715-3580, access code 773-342. And anybody can call in for that. I will give priority to women and youth age 37 and younger, but anybody watching over the internet can call in. We regard them as family too, and they may be just that gift from the universe that gives the drop of miracle and marvelous miracle to give this additional momentum. So you are welcome. And of course, that's a country code 1. If you're calling from outside the country, it's 011-641-715-3580, access code 773-342. Okay, we love you so much. We'll give you one more screenshot of this marvelous, miraculous place that we would believe we can open. Oh, and I neglected to mention another line of our family. Through Lynn Margulies, we are also connected to Rachel, who was the mother of Carl Alexander Sagan, the opener of the Stargates in the Cosmos writing and in the Contact film, who envisioned the main character as really an embodiment of his mother, who has my name. So we bring these families together, and of course Lynn's daughter Jennifer and her daughters Hesperus and Athena, and her son Etani, and all of their relations, and our Margulian and all our Margulian and Sagan relations, and who are also related to our sweet family, Lynn and Nisa, whose mother Iona has the same name as Iona Vargas, the expert about family reunions at Temple University. a woman of color, and we have to say that we all are the colors of the rainbow, and we all need those kinds of family reunions that become LU Savioral Mysteries Revealed. So now we'll send this message. Hope you enjoyed the ceremony.